The story commences with a desolate city resembling a post-apocalyptic scene. Out of the blue, an emergency alert blares, triggering panic among the people. The government swiftly issues orders for the evacuation of children and the elderly. Frightened individuals seek refuge in buildings, their bodies trembling with fear. Peering out of a window, a young girl realizes that her worst nightmare has become a grim reality. Hideous, terrifying monsters emerge from every corner, infesting not just the land but also the water and the sky. The city becomes overrun by these nightmarish creatures. A man cowers behind the shattered wall of a multi-story building, consumed by fear. Summoning his courage, he decides to cautiously peek out of his hiding spot. But as he does so, his gaze meets that of a colossal and enraged monster. The monstrous being ruthlessly pummels the building, smashing it with relentless force. This is no dream or game. These interdimensional monsters have breached the barrier between their world and ours. For centuries, these creatures existed only in legends, but now, in the 21st century, they launch vicious attacks on cities, plunging the world into this horrifying reality. The protagonist, perched atop a building, surveys the apocalyptic scene unfolding before his eyes. A small dog valiantly tries to shield its owner from one of the monsters. Determined, the protagonist decides not to hesitate any longer and embarks on a descent from the building. Simultaneously, another monster springs forth from the structure, poised to devour the protagonist. With its immense toothy maw agape, the monster lunges forward, but the protagonist delivers a powerful blow right into its jaws. Startled by the commotion, the monster harassing the boy and his dog turns its attention to the fallen comrade. Seizing the opportunity, the protagonist rescues the boy, swiftly spiriting him away to safety. Though shaken, the boy assures the protagonist that he's unharmed. However, their momentary respite is short-lived as they find themselves under attack once again, this time by another monster. The monster reaches out with its claw, intent on snatching them, but the protagonist launches a counterattack. The creature hurtles several meters away, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Yet the monster is merely one among many, a horde of them descending upon the protagonist. Channeling an extraordinary power, the protagonist's body and eyes emanate a mesmerizing blue glow. He engages the monsters in a relentless assault, dispatching them with remarkable ease, as if it were an everyday occurrence. After vanquishing all the monsters, a colossal shadow casts itself upon the protagonist. It belongs to a gigantic monster whose leg looms above him threateningly. Undeterred, the protagonist steadfastly withstands the impending attack, defying harm. In a bold maneuver, he strikes back, punching through the monster's defenses. Sensing a presence behind him, the protagonist turns around, coming face to face with a man with scarred body and piercing red eyes, perched atop the building's rooftop. Without uttering a word, the man sheds his raincoat, his body glowing with a crimson radiance. They charge at each other, hurtling through the building, ready to engage in an epic showdown. The protagonist is aware only of the fact that these monsters have come for him. He is the catalyst for the cataclysmic events unfolding. Flashback to 8 months ago, when the protagonist was returning home from school. Local bullies, reveling in their cruelty, decide to orchestrate a spectacle intending to upload it on social media. One of the bullies bellows that a grand spectacle is about to unfold, striking the protagonist on the head, causing him to crumple to the ground. Amidst the laughter of the bullies, the protagonist struggles to rise. However, the relentless bully pins him down while others capture the torment on video. Yanking the protagonist by his hair, the bully taunts him, labeling him an outcast, a pitiable dog. This was the protagonist's life at the age of 19, before the awakening of his extraordinary abilities. In the dining hall, 2 students deliberate on where to sit. By chance, they almost choose the same table as the protagonist. One of the students recognizes him, thanks to the video circulating throughout the school, and they opt to find another table. The protagonist's name is Han Nero, although everyone knows him as Dog Nero. He is a transfer student, an outcast amongst his peers. Nero is required to take medication, but the bullies reignite their assault, taunting him as a drug addict. The protagonist crumples to the ground, his pills scattering across the floor. The bully sadistically crushes the pills beneath his foot, mockingly suggesting they might be Viagra. They warn Nero to be cautious, lest his mother discover his secret medication. Sneering, the bully declares that Nero has no mother, as he is an orphan. Meanwhile, the gang's ringleader arrives, questioning their motives for tormenting the vulnerable. He chastises them, insisting that those in need deserve support, not cruelty. The bully resumes his assault on Nero, who bears the physical blows with indifference. What truly bothers him is his own lack of control. His body, fueled by anger and rage, seems bound by rusty chains. He can't even muster the slightest movement, and his heart brims with pent-up fury. A peculiar force restrains Nero, denying him the freedom to unleash his wrath. He yearns to unleash his fury, to annihilate all those who have tormented him. The bully prepares to strike once more, but an authoritative voice commands them to disperse. Enter Lai Luna, a 19-year-old girl, who calls out the bullies for disturbing the peace. She exclaims that she can't even pour herself water due to their rowdiness. The bully swiftly apologizes, clearly infatuated with Lai Luna. The group departs, leaving with praises for her beauty, bidding her farewell. Lai Luna notices Nero, bruised and battered. He rises from the floor and walks away, evading her gaze. Observing his scattered pills, Lai Luna becomes intrigued. Later, the protagonist observes a football game from the back of the Control Sunrise Lin, where he is perched. Nero ascends, capturing the shot as it plummets through the wall. He gazes at the car from the rooftop, his neck craning as he contemplates. Nero reaches his hand into his pocket, feeling for something. He spots a football lodged between the walls. Suddenly, he hears voices, his classmates clamoring to witness the event. They notice a sinister figure lurking within the window, a ghostly apparition. Filled with terror, they assume it to be a mere Photoshop creation. As night falls, the figure depicted in the photo emerges from the tower, driven by a relentless pursuit of a mysterious key. Returning home, the protagonist tends to his wounds. Unexpectedly, he hears his grandmother approaching his room. Hastily, Nero conceals his ointments and medicine, pulling the blanket over himself. His grandmother enters, recognizing that Nero must be tired and should rest, but not before eating. Nero quickly claims to have already eaten with friends. His grandmother takes notice of the bandages and ointments strewn about the bed, playfully suggesting that he should invite his friends over next time. She promises to prepare something delicious. As his grandmother departs, Nero emerges from beneath the blanket, realizing the need to hide his swollen face. He dreads his grandmother's shock if she were to see his injuries. In the mirror, Nero beholds his still healing wounds, realizing he can't face his grandmother with his battered appearance. The next morning, his grandmother cheerfully prepares breakfast. The radio announces clear weather and low levels of fine dust, prompting the suggestion of taking a leisurely walk. Nero peers into the mirror, observing that his facial swelling has slightly subsided. He ponders the dilemma of revealing his injuries to his grandmother. Grandma's voice rings out, beckoning Nero to rise for school and breakfast before it turns cold. Nero exits his room, concealing his face with a towel, and explains that he's feeling a bit unwell and will take a shower first. At that moment, the doorbell rings. Nero approaches the intercom and discovers a peculiar courier waiting outside. Nero opens the door, retreating to the shower. His body is adorned with bruises, evidence of his recent struggles. Simultaneously, the enigmatic courier ventures into Nero's apartment. Grandma greets the visitor, only to witness his true monstrous form, which frightens her. Tentacles protrude from the courier's mouth, lunging toward Grandma, but narrowly missing their mark. Grandma falls to the floor, and the monster attempts to attack her once more. Unexpectedly, an unknown force materializes near Grandma's hand, manifesting as threads that ensnare the monster. Pulling the threads taut, Grandma constricts the monster, leaving crimson marks on her face. She declares that it's time for the monsters to cease their search. The monster vehemently asserts that it will continue hunting for the key. Summoning her strength, Grandma severs the monster's hands, but it remains relentless in its assault. Chaos ensues within the apartment, yet Nero remains oblivious to the commotion. Grandma restrains the monster with her threads, demanding its silence. Nero, believing he had imagined the noise, remains unaware. The battle between Grandma and the monster rages on. The monster charges at Grandma, but she retaliates with a powerful attack, weaving an intricate web of threads. Nero finally realizes he wasn't mistaken. Something momentous is unfolding. He exits the shower, questioning his grandmother about the source of the disturbance. With the monster bound by her threads, Grandma reluctantly admits that she possesses extraordinary powers, a secret previously concealed from Nero. The monster jeers at Grandma, confident in the imminent arrival of the king's forces. Fueled by rage, Grandma tightens her hold on the monster, who scoffs at her futile resistance. The monster begins to attack Grandma once again, but she perseveres, determined to protect Nero. The battle intensifies, with Nero's heart pounding in his chest. The monster lunges at Grandma, only to be ensnared by her threads once more. Nero, unable to comprehend the unfolding events, desperately pounds on the door, demanding answers. In that moment, Grandma severs the monster's hand. The monster, now devoid of appendages, launches a final attack on Grandma. With her strength waning, she delivers a resolute strike, severing the monster into countless pieces. Nero, bleeding and on the brink of unconsciousness, is left to contemplate the bewildering scene. The life he once knew is forever shattered. At the police station, the officer acknowledges Nero's frequent visits, jaded by the protagonist's persistent presence. The officer questions Nero's insistence, reminding him that filing a missing persons report for his grandmother is unnecessary. Nero insists that something terrible has happened, recounting the gruesome scene that unfolded before him. The officer nonchalantly suggests that Grandma is probably staying at a relative's house, citing Nero's lack of awareness regarding his grandmother's whereabouts. Nero remains undeterred, adamant that something malevolent is at play. The officer dismisses his concerns, stating that it's common for elderly individuals to wander off. Nero, angered by the officer's apathy, begins to lose hope. However, he refuses to abandon his search, determined to unravel the mysteries surrounding his grandmother's disappearance. As the sun sets, Nero ventures into the heart of the city, searching for any traces of his grandmother. He retraces their steps, reliving the memories they shared. In the distance, a flickering light captures his attention. Nero cautiously approaches, finding himself in an abandoned alley. Amidst the detritus, he discovers a photograph, faded and worn. The image depicts his grandmother, a radiant smile adorning her face. Nero clings to the photograph, vowing to uncover the truth and rescue his grandmother from whatever darkness has befallen her. Grandma sat by the roadside, diligently arranging cardboard pieces in a rickety cart. The cart, unable to bear the weight, began to sway, causing the cardboard to topple over. Just then, a kind-hearted boy named Nero happened to pass by. Witnessing the mishap, he rushed to Grandma's aid, assuring her that he would help. Grateful, Grandma expressed her belief in the existence of good-hearted children like Nero. As he looked at her, memories of his own grandmother flooded Nero's mind. Realizing that adding more cardboard would only lead to further chaos, Nero suggested that Grandma's bigger cart, which she mentioned was further down the road, would be a better option. Determined, Nero offered to fetch the larger cart himself. However, as fate would have it, a group of school bullies barged into a nearby convenience store, complaining about the challenges they faced in buying cigarettes due to law-abiding citizens. They targeted Lai Luna, the store attendant, urging her to sell them cigarettes. In an attempt to increase her earnings, Lai Luna demanded proof of age from the bullies. Perplexed, the bullies argued that she already knew them well and shouldn't be so difficult. Firm in her principles, Lai Luna refused to sell cigarettes to children in school uniforms. Frustrated by Lai Luna's refusal, the bullies, despite acknowledging her beauty, demonstrated their impoliteness and asserted their superiority due to being older than her. One bully even boasted about repeating a grade, implying he was older than Lai Luna. However, when questioned about the year he was born, he confidently responded with the year of the goat, which turned out to be incorrect. Lai Luna promptly showed them the door, unimpressed by their behavior. To everyone's surprise, one of the bullies spotted his grandmother near the store. He handed her money, instructing her to buy 2 packs of cigarettes and keep the change for herself, suggesting she could buy a new cart with the extra money. Grandma, wise and caring, advised the bullies against damaging their lungs at such a young age and sent them home empty-handed. Annoyed by her interference, the bullies callously crushed her cardboard with their feet, underestimating her resilience due to her age. Infuriated, Nero returned with the cart he had fetched and witnessed the bullies shouting at Grandma. Unable to tolerate their insolence any longer, Nero raised his voice, demanding an end to their mistreatment. He swiftly handed the cart to Grandma, offering his support. Provoked by Nero's intervention, one of the bullies snidely speculated if he was defending Grandma because she was his own grandmother. Nero, noticing the state of Grandma's ruined cardboard, felt anger surge through him. The bully taunted Nero, suggesting that he would once again lower his gaze like he used to. Emboldened, the bully grabbed Nero's shirt, dragging him into an alley. Confused and bewildered, Nero found himself amidst a pile of garbage, unsure of his mistake. However, an intense anger continued to burn within him. The bully, mocking Nero, claimed he needed regular physical therapy to control his anger. Deep within Nero's heart, something shattered. The bully initiated a physical assault, striking Nero repeatedly. In the depths of his being, Nero felt a profound crack resound, unable to withstand the onslaught. The bully landed a forceful kick to Nero's face, emphasizing that even a dog would have been more obedient. As the bully prepared to strike again, Nero instinctively grabbed hold of his leg, his anger consuming him. Squeezing tighter with every passing second, Nero's grip intensified, causing the bully to writhe in pain. Nero's eyes glowed with intensity, a blue mark emerging on his face. Hearing his friend's agonized screams, another school bully rushed to his aid. Park Junhak, witnessing the pain inflicted on his friend, exclaimed about the excruciating pain in his leg. The bully, taken aback by Nero's unprecedented display of strength, turned around and questioned the damage done to Nero's face. Sensing danger, Nero swiftly retreated, finding solace on a swing in the nearby playground. Sitting there, he recalled that fateful day, feeling as if a monstrous hand had pierced through him. Yet, upon awakening, he discovered no physical wounds. Since then, everything had changed, leaving him with a profound sense of unease. His body no longer felt like his own, and this newfound power felt foreign and unsettling. What had happened to him? The following morning, rumors spread among classmates about Park Joon-hak's hospitalization. The cause of his serious injuries remained a mystery, leading to speculation about a fight or an accident. The school bully found the situation suspicious, unable to comprehend how someone who had always relied on medication could suddenly become so strong. Frustrated, he confronted Nero, but received no response. Outraged by Nero's apparent calmness, the bully berated him for acting nonchalant after causing harm to his friend. He questioned if Nero had a death wish. Jung Yang, witnessing the altercation, intervened and apologized, explaining that Nero had been through something traumatic recently, making it difficult for him to cope. The bully, dismissive of Jung Yang's words, accused him of being Nero's bodyguard. Jung Yang refuted the claim, but the bully threatened him with violence if he didn't stay silent. Suddenly, something changed within Nero. He rose from the table, his eyes assuming an otherworldly appearance, leaving the bully terrified and perplexed. Had Nero always possessed such a formidable presence? The bully, now convinced that the previous night's events were real, realized that something was truly amiss with Nero. Fearful of the consequences, he hesitated to engage in further conflict, ultimately choosing to walk away. Meanwhile, Jung Yang observed that Nero seemed transformed. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jung Yang took his dog, Munshai, for a leisurely stroll. Apologizing to the faithful companion for his frequent absences, Jung Yang promised that they would enjoy afternoon walks together on the upcoming weekend. Suddenly, Munshai's attention was captivated by the sight of Nero sprinting past them. The dog began barking furiously, only to fall silent as Nero disappeared from sight. Puzzled, Jung Yang remarked that Munshai seemed to have seen a ghost. Nero continued his hasty run until he reached an abandoned building, which he decided to climb. From atop the roof, he spotted a heap of beams. Removing his hood, Nero felt the cool night air brush against his face. Drawn to the beams, he approached and attempted to lift one with a single hand. To his surprise, the beam proved unyielding, making him question the absurdity of his newfound strength. However, returning to reality, Nero realized that his doubts were unfounded. Spinning around, he effortlessly shattered the iron beam. An unsettling feeling coursed through him. Nero resolved to lift the beam with both hands, and with a determined effort, his body emanated a mysterious blue glow. Despite the challenge, Nero successfully lifted the beam single-handedly. What had become of him? The next morning, Park Joon-hak returned to school relying on crutches and sporting a bandaged leg. The rumors of his injuries proved true, leading classmates to speculate about fights and accidents. The bully found the situation perplexing, questioning how a weakling like Nero could cause such harm. Park Joon-hak dismissed the bully's concerns, pointing out that Nero had always been different. Meanwhile, Lee Luna, having observed the fight, deemed the situation childish, acknowledging that the bullies had tormented Nero when he was weak and were now scared of him. In a candid manner, she encouraged them to admit their fear rather than pretend otherwise. Incensed by Lee Luna's remarks, the bully expressed his frustration, unable to comprehend how Nero could remain composed despite the circumstances. He accused Nero of ingratitude, claiming that his previous kindness had been misplaced. In his eyes, did Nero truly desire death? Jung Yang interjected, attempting to defuse the situation, but the bully's anger only intensified. Suddenly, a transformation overcame Nero. His eyes underwent a startling change, filling the bully with fear. Had Nero always been so imposing? Doubts about the previous night's events solidified in the bully's mind as he realized that something truly peculiar was afoot. Terrified and unsure of what to do, the bully decided it was best to strike first, knowing he might suffer the consequences. To everyone's surprise, Nero's demeanor remained calm and collected. Jung Yang, who had anticipated a fight, was relieved to see the situation diffused. Observing Nero closely, Jung Yang sensed that he had become an entirely different person. After a while, Nero arrived at school, only to find that news of his fight with Gu Sang-chun had spread throughout the entire campus. He hoped that no strange rumors would arise from the incident. As he walked into the classroom, all eyes turned towards him. classmates who had never paid him any attention before started greeting him warmly. Zhongyang, his friend, approached him and accompanied him to his desk. Zhongyang mentioned how nobody had dared to stand up to Gu Sangchun before, but thanks to Nero, they now had the courage to do so. Nero was considering Zhongyang's suggestion of going to karaoke or the game center after school when Li Luna, another classmate, approached him. She asked if they could meet after school. Nero was about to inquire about the reason, but Zhongyang interrupted and assured him that he should agree to the meeting. Zhongyang revealed that he had already figured out everything during their time in the dining room. He congratulated Nero on joining the ranks of ordinary people and assured him that things would be fine. Meanwhile, Gu Sangchun was taking out his anger on other students who had spread rumors about him in the morning. He couldn't fathom how the insignificant Nero had dared to defy him. Filled with rage, Sangchun believed that a dog like Nero deserved punishment for biting people. In the school restroom, Sangchun cornered Yonyang, demanding that he bring Nero to him. He claimed that he only wanted to apologize to Nero. When Zhongyang refused to comply, Sangchun slapped him across the face, sending his glasses flying to the floor. Enraged, Sangchun continued to attack Zhongyang, even stepping on his hand with all his might, causing Zhongyang to scream in pain. Sangchun blamed Zhongyang for everything, stating that he deserved it for being a fool. Sangchun had been listening to the whispers behind his back all day, and now he had just broken Zhongyang's arm, claiming it was all the fault of the dog Nero. Sangchun wanted to spit on him and continued to unleash his fury on Zhongyang. While this was happening, Nero was attending a lecture by a ruler named Tae-jin, whose middle name was Li Banwan. Nero vaguely remembered learning about him as a historical figure who had gained power by betraying the prince. Tae-jin had suppressed a rebellion, solidifying his position. In the midst of the lecture, Nero realized that Zhongyang hadn't returned to class after going to the restroom. Concerned, Nero decided to search for his friend, as he knew Zhongyang wouldn't skip class without a reason. Something must have happened to him. Nero arrived at the restroom just as Zhongyang emerged from it. However, to his horror, he saw that Zhongyang was badly beaten and bruised. Zhongyang mentioned that he hadn't made it back to class and assured Nero that he was fine. They moved to the medical room where Zhongyang reassured Nero once again. He explained that he had fought with Gu Sangchun and realized that Sangchun wasn't as terrifying as he seemed. In fact, Zhongyang had even managed to land some punches on him. Sangchun was probably still crying from the pain. Nero expressed his concern for Zhongyang, believing that his friend didn't deserve such treatment. However, Zhongyang responded by saying that Nero didn't deserve it either. They both agreed that those who had bullied them were just foolish hooligans. Suddenly, Nero stood up abruptly and asked where the bullies had gone. Zhongyang tried to stop him, insisting that everything was fine. But Nero declared that it was just the beginning and they wouldn't stop until they made Zhongyang their victim. Zhongyang noted the change in Nero's demeanor and acknowledged that it was Nero who had shown him the futility of remaining silent in the face of injustice. Now, Zhongyang had decided to change and would no longer allow himself to be bullied. He assured Nero that he didn't have to worry about him anymore, as this was just the beginning of his own path. Nero observed a hopeful smile on Zhongyang's face despite the fear he must have felt. After some time, Nero informed Li Luna that he had an urgent matter to attend to and needed to leave. Li Luna tried to stop him, but as they reached the door, they were confronted by the school bullies who had been waiting for Nero. At the same time, mysterious individuals in black robes stood near the school premises. Nero and the bullies ended up in a place with rusty doors. Nero gathered his courage, realizing that since he had confronted them before, he shouldn't be afraid anymore. The bullies threatened him, but Nero warned them that they would no longer lay a finger on Zhongyang. He issued them a final warning. While Sangchun sarcastically thanked Nero for his advice, he couldn't help but feel a tremor of fear as Nero entered the building. A man with a bat suddenly appeared behind Nero, but with lightning speed, Nero dodged the attack and ended up behind the bully, striking back and sending him crashing to the ground. Another student, armed with a bat, tried to attack Nero, but to everyone's astonishment, Nero soared into the air and drove an iron bat into the ceiling. The students couldn't comprehend what was happening. How had Nero become so strong? The bullies decided to test Nero's strength by attacking him all at once. However, Nero continued to effortlessly defeat them, while Sangchun looked on in disbelief. Nero's power and agility were beyond anything they had ever witnessed. The bullies soon found themselves lying defeated on the ground. Nero commanded Sangchun to approach him, and though terrified, Sangchun obeyed. He couldn't comprehend how Nero had managed to overpower them. Sangchun noticed a nearby bottle and broke it, preparing to use it as a weapon. but Nero declared that Sang-chun wouldn't be going anywhere and that it would all end there for him. Just as Sang-chun prepared to retaliate, cries for help could be heard from outside. A monster had entered the school premises and was attacking students. Panic ensued as chaos engulfed the school. Meanwhile, Zhongyang lay in the medical room and heard a strange noise. Curiosity got the better of him and he decided to investigate. To his surprise, instead of his teacher, a terrifying monster appeared before him. Back at the confrontation, Nero and Sang-chun were locked in a room with a sturdy door. Sang-chun grew increasingly furious, realizing that there were windows in the room from which they could escape. He was determined to finish off Nero, but soon realized that there was no way out. The teacher emerged from the office, shouting at the troublemakers in the corridor, but was immediately attacked by a monster and thrown back into the office. The students, witnessing the monster's grotesque face, screamed in terror as they attempted to flee. However, the monsters chased them relentlessly. In the midst of the chaos, Zhongyang and Nero reunited. Suddenly they heard the pleas for help from the students and realized that the monsters had come for Nero. Without hesitation, Nero rushed out of the school, luring the monsters away to protect the other students still inside. Nero swiftly entered the gymnasium and locked the door, leaving Sang-chun infuriated. Inside the gym, Nero found himself surrounded by a horde of monsters. Determined to defend himself, he used a metal basketball basket to hold them off. Nero realized that these creatures lacked rational thinking and only sought to kill him. However, he also noticed Li Luna appearing, using her fishing line as a weapon to restrain and defeat the monsters. The students marveled at her unexpected display of strength and skill. Amidst the battle, a colossal monster emerged, its body composed of merged monsters, with countless red eyes staring at Nero and Li Luna. Sensing the imminent danger, they sought cover. The monster charged at them on all fours, but Li Luna cleverly taunted it, diverting its attention. Nero seized the opportunity to dismantle the gym structure, tearing out beams and wielding them as weapons. He launched a fierce attack against the colossal monster, shattering the icy confines that held it. The battle intensified, but Nero's power waned, and he collapsed unconscious. When Nero regained consciousness, he found himself in a bed in an unfamiliar place. Despite the pain in his chest, he got up and explored the surroundings, realizing that it was a heavily fortified house with bars on the windows. Nero sensed the danger lurking in this place, but he couldn't leave just yet. Venturing into a room, he discovered an array of weapons resembling a torture chamber. The sight perplexed him, wondering why such a collection of weapons existed in this house. As he pondered, he heard someone humming a tune. Nero instinctively grabbed an axe for self-defense and cautiously approached the source of the sound. To his surprise, it was Li Luna, who had just finished showering. Startled, both of them screamed in fear upon seeing each other. After a while, Nero looked at a painting in the room, and Li Luna mentioned that it seemed like he had an impressive healing ability. Nero revealed that his grandmother had taught him various skills, including cooking. This piqued Li Luna's curiosity about Nero's grandmother and their relationship. Meanwhile, videos of the monster incidents in the school began circulating among students from other schools. Some dismissed them as staged and edited videos, while others believed the witness accounts. The organization responsible for dealing with these monsters, known as M1, closely monitored the situation and decided to keep the incidents under wraps. They recognized the need for more individuals with special powers to join their ranks. As Nero shared his memories of his grandmother with Li Luna, they both realized that they needed to confront the truth behind the monsters. Li Luna suggested they visit the organization, a secret group that trained and protected people with superpowers. Nero agreed, understanding that he needed to find answers and gather the strength to fight the monsters. Together, they arrived at the organization's headquarters, a towering building that appeared deceptively ordinary from the outside. Nero observed the girl donning their school uniform and couldn't help but recognize the familiar attire. As they approached the elevator, an automated voice prompted them to confirm their identities. Li Luna swiftly placed her hand on the scanner, verifying her identity without a hitch. Together, they stepped into the elevator, destined for the enigmatic 15th floor. Upon arrival, Nero's attention was captivated by the bustling activity around them. Employees meticulously examined blood samples and assessed individuals' physical abilities, leaving him intrigued. Li Luna leaned closer and remarked that they now had to pass through a door reminiscent of a sturdy bunker entrance. Curiosity gnawed at Nero, questioning whether the girl with the musical instrument would also accompany them on this mysterious journey. Just as the anticipation swelled, a girl named Erin approached the door, poised to open it. However, Li Luna, always one step ahead, interjected with delight, exclaiming how long it had been since they last saw each other. With Li Luna's intervention, they all proceeded inside, and to Nero's astonishment, An abundance of surveillance cameras silently observed their every move. What kind of place was this? The employees, their eyes fixated on the monitors, confirmed their arrival and declared that it was finally time to commence the test. The captain's authoritative voice resonated through the room, commanding the initiation of the assessment. Aaron strode toward a nearby table, unlocking her musical instrument case. To everyone's surprise, nestled within the case lay a concealed weapon, shrouded in secrecy and purpose. Aaron swiftly assembled the machine gun with the speed of a lightning bolt, directing its barrel towards Nero. Baffled, Liluna struggled to comprehend Aaron's intentions. Had Aaron completely lost their sanity? Aaron inquired of Liluna, pleadingly asking if she failed to grasp the gravity of the situation. They should have been vigilant the moment they laid eyes upon the formidable weapon. Recognizing Aaron's resolute demeanor, Nero comprehended that Aaron was dead serious. Perplexed, Liluna remained oblivious to their motives. Observing from the sidelines, the captain's gaze was fixed upon the unfolding spectacle. With their hand gripping the trigger, Aaron asserted that it was their adversary's own fault, absolving themselves of any blame. In the blink of an eye, a bullet soared towards Nero, who managed to deftly evade the attack, albeit with a grazing scratch upon his cheek. The captain acknowledged that Nero had successfully passed the speed test. Aaron commenced shooting at Nero, yet he deftly maneuvered himself, swiftly appearing beside them. Aaron intended to pull the trigger once more, but Nero's counterattack against the machine gun altered the bullet's trajectory. The sheer potency of the ammunition pierced through the ceiling, prompting its inevitable collapse. Engulfed in the ensuing chaos and dust, Nero's visibility was reduced to nil, relying solely on his acute sense of hearing. Simultaneously, two razor-sharp blades, intricately connected by a chain, materialized before Nero's eyes. Displaying remarkable agility, he evaded the impending assault, narrowly escaping the lethal blades. However, the formidable chain-link structure impeded any straightforward approach towards Aaron. An overwhelming fear gripped Nero as he grappled with the dread of his powers spiraling out of control. The question loomed: what course of action should he pursue? Failure to rein in his abilities would potentially transform him into an adversary to the very organization he sought to protect. Amidst his contemplation, Nero skillfully dodged Aaron's onslaught, meticulously considering his next move. Aaron's blades ravaged everything in their path, leaving a trail of destruction. The captain, perceptive in his observations, couldn't help but wonder why Nero refrained from retaliating. Employing swift aerial maneuvers, Nero deftly navigated the air, ensuring that his landing spots remained beyond Aaron's deadly reach. Nero's attention was captivated by the ever-increasing number of blades emerging from Aaron's arsenal. Unbeknownst to him, these blades remained surreptitiously concealed until now. Before he could react, Nero found himself abruptly sprawled on the floor, momentarily incapacitated. Seizing the moment, Liluna tightly grasped Aaron's hand, assertively declaring, "Enough!" She refused to passively witness further harm inflicted upon Nero. Unexpectedly, a resonant voice boomed, announcing the completion of the test results. Aaron swiftly withdrew their hand and made their exit, leaving behind telltale scratches caused by the chains. The captain approached Nero, inquiring about his reluctance to resist. Could it be that he was concealing his true power? Expressing her discontent, Liluna voiced her dismay at the cruelty of the orders they had received, lamenting the lack of transparency surrounding them. The captain elucidated that the test aimed to gauge Nero's response to an unforeseen assault. Nero explained his decision to abstain from engaging in combat, emphasizing his concern for the girl's safety. With a wry grin, the captain remarked that Nero had indeed underestimated her. He proceeded to reveal that monsters possessed the ability to detect individuals with special powers, shedding light on Nero's recent discovery of his own abilities. These malevolent creatures sought to infiltrate the human realm and eliminate those gifted with extraordinary powers. Individuals like Aaron, Liluna, and Nero posed a threat to the monster's ambition of conquering humanity. Would Nero merely sit back and allow these abominations to slaughter innocent lives? Surviving the impending monster hunt necessitated Nero's acquisition of certain prerequisites: weapons, training, and the unwavering support of the M1 organization. To secure these, Nero would have to prove his worth directly to the captain. Suddenly, a young girl materialized on the screen, confidently asserting that the captain would undoubtedly be intrigued to witness something firsthand. She had received information pertaining to the latest case. The captain dismissed their current meeting, promising to reconvene at another time. Nero couldn't help but ask, "Do all these monsters have to die?" The captain explained that throughout the organization's history, no successful attempts had been made to establish peaceful relations with monsters. Therefore, the only viable course of action was the eradication of each and every one of them. Sometime later, Nero noticed that Liluna appeared distressed. Their attention was drawn to Aaron, a combat agent of the M1 organization who stood in the hallway. Aaron, 19 years old, had become a skilled fighter since discovering her own abilities as a child. Leia Luna speculated whether Aaron was similar to her, a fellow human fighter. She remarked that Aaron seemed innocent, yet could be incredibly menacing when engaged in combat. As they conversed, a group of employees rushed past Nero and Liluna, carrying a man on a gurney. A girl with white hair mentioned the need to check the patient's vital signs, leaving Nero with a sense of familiarity. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had seen that person before. Meanwhile, in the demon dimension, Chen diligently trained with a sword in hand. With immense effort, he made the sword radiate a vibrant red glow. Chen then unleashed a powerful strike upon a stack of large stones, causing them to crack under the force. Kum approached Chen, remarking that news had spread about no one returning from the human dimension this time. Chen acknowledged the truth of Kum's words but remained resolute, claiming that the time of the demons would surely come. However, Kum stressed that they couldn't afford to wait, urging Chen to act swiftly. Chen understood the urgency, acknowledging that the gateway would eventually open. Returning to the marketplace, Nero made his way to the old man's shop, who had been searching for him. It turned out that Nero no longer required medication. He explained that while he didn't currently need suppressors, he still wished to prevent his demonic personality from surfacing. He wondered if there were alternative ways to harness his power. The old man emphasized that practice would be the key, urging Nero to learn how to control his internal energy to fully master his own body. Eager to train, Nero expressed his desire to learn. The old man pulled up his hood, cautioning Nero to temper his enthusiasm. Understanding that Nero wouldn't be able to manage everything at once, the old man explained that he should visit him after sunset every day, starting from that day. Meanwhile, at the school, students noticed ongoing repairs in the gymnasium. Something extraordinary had occurred, but everyone seemed to dismiss it as though it hadn't even happened. There was no mention of it in the news, and the government had even deleted all camera recordings. Without concrete evidence, it seemed the incident had been erased from existence. Late at night, Nero emerged from his room and headed towards the exit. Liluna expressed her concern, reminding him of the dangers of wandering alone. Nero appreciated her worry but explained that he felt suffocated and desired a solitary walk. Liluna couldn't help but remark on Nero's frequent nighttime excursions, considering him a victim of circumstances. After a while, Nero and the old man arrived at a hidden warehouse, away from prying eyes. The old man emphasized the importance of secrecy. Lifting a piece of cardboard from the floor, he revealed a trapdoor leading to an underground passage. Nero pondered whether Liluna had a similar secret room at her home, musing that secret chambers seemed to be a common occurrence. The old man informed Nero that they had arrived at the place where he would refine his skills. Placing his hand on a massive stone in the passage, the old man's hand emitted a luminous green glow. Ancient seals materialized on the cobblestone, causing it to vanish. The time had come to test Nero's true strength. The old man stepped away from his position and brandished a wooden cane, launching an attack on Nero. However, Nero effortlessly evaded the strikes, realizing that the cane could extend and transform into a spear. Within seconds, 3 spears materialized, launching an onslaught against Nero. The old man urged him to stop evading and start fighting back, yet Nero seemed resistant, unwilling to engage until provoked by anger. The old man realized that if Nero didn't know how to fight, he would never become a true warrior. Taking matters into his own hands, the old man renewed his assault, ultimately pinning Nero against a wall with a spear. Unexpectedly, the old man inquired about the circumstances surrounding Sana's death. He speculated that Sana must have endured immense suffering at the hands of the Demon King's servants. Puzzled, he questioned why this had happened. After all, Sana had been the kingdom's greatest warrior, fully capable of dispatching those insects effortlessly. But somehow Nero had interfered, leading to Sana's sacrifice as she protected a defenseless boy. All of Sana's efforts had been in vain. These words kindled a flame of anger within Nero, a mark manifesting on his body. If only he hadn't been weak, everything would have been different. In that moment, Nero seized the spear, wrenching it from the old man's grip. With conviction, he declared that he needed to grow stronger to take responsibility for his grandmother's death. The old man stared in disbelief as he witnessed the frigid aura surrounding Nero, unable to fathom what he was witnessing. The chilling breath signified that Nero was the eldest son, a crack between the human world and the demon world. Monsters had always sought to invade another dimension, while humans had fiercely resisted. But where there was an exit, there was bound to be an entrance. People had discovered a rift and infiltrated the world of demons, yet their feeble mortal bodies proved no match for the inhabitants of that realm. It was then that Demon King Han, yearning for peace, assisted a woman in surviving. Their love blossomed, resulting in the birth of a new form of life and the catalyst for future events. Nero was the son of King Han, a prince born of both human and monster blood. The revelation left the old man momentarily dumbfounded. Returning to the old man's shop, he examined Nero's spiritual energy and noticed an unbridled force surging within him. It seemed as though this malevolent and fierce power threatened to burst forth at any moment. The old man stressed the importance of maintaining the flow of energy within Nero's body. Placing his hands on Nero's back, he promised to clear the path. Suddenly, Nero's power erupted, causing him to scream in agony as the force surged through his body. The jars in the room filled with the released power, sealed with arcane symbols. Collapsing to the floor, Nero heard the old man proclaim that it was enough to control the force. Suppressors would have only poisoned him. Thus, Nero now had to decide whether to conceal his power or reveal it to the world. If he could master his demonic abilities, he would possess a greater power than he could ever imagine. Descending once again into the depths of the underground, the old man warned that Nero's power exceeded his own and was currently uncontrollable. Confronting this challenge required unconventional means. Opening one of the jars containing Nero's power, the old man ignited an incense. Fear and pain soon followed, giving birth to a spectral manifestation that launched an assault on Nero. Though illusory, this apparition represented the inner strength Nero needed to overcome. He had to transcend this trial and defeat the illusion to prove his worth.